On this channel, we talk a lot about the healing power of shadow work. And the shadow is essentially our unconscious mind, or the things that we have not looked at or hidden, or aspects of us that we're not really aware of, essentially, that could be affecting different areas of our life, like our relationship or work or our health. And in this video, I want to talk to you about shadows in relationships, and specifically 8 very, very common shadows that come up when we're relating to someone else, when we're just about to go into a partnership with someone, or we're about to start dating, or if we're already in a partnership, already in a relationship. And the reason I talk about this is because for me and my journey, shadow work and the inner healing that was needed for me has vastly transformed my own intimate relationships, both friendships and romantic ones. I used to be in relationships that were not very healthy romantically, and I kept going through these same repeating patterns over and over again, same thing happening over and over again, and I didn't understand why. And that was until I took about 2 years to do really deep inner healing work, where I wasn't really dating anyone. I was just doing the work within myself so that I could actually step into being available for a partner that was quite different from what I had experienced before. And I'm so grateful that I get to experience that now. And in this video, I just want to share with you some very common things that show up within relationships. These are things that I've experienced myself, and I want to share how to go about healing and working through these things. So let's get into it. Number 1 is projection. And projection is a really, really important thing when it comes to any type of inner work that we're doing, any shadow work, because projection is the putting things that have happened in the past onto the current moment. If we have been hurt in the past and it really caused a rift in our nervous system, it caused a lot of fear, unprocessed emotions where their beliefs about ourselves started happening, or about other people that wasn't resolved, that kind of got stuck in the past, then gets put on a filter onto the current moment. So if we experience, for example, rejection or abandonment or something hurtful happening in the past, like betrayal too, we might actually be projecting those wounds onto our current relationships. Or we might be projecting those things onto our potential relationships if we're not dating anyone yet. We might feel so much fear and hurt from the past if we haven't looked at it, if we haven't processed, if we haven't done the work within to meet those parts of ourselves that experience what they experienced. Then those parts of us will show up in the current moment, and we might then not be able or available to see the person that is right in front of us. Maybe they're not actually doing anything to breach our trust or doing anything that will indicate that they're going to leave us, right? But it's just our past projected onto the current and onto another person. And again, we might also fear going into actually start dating someone because we have unprocessed stuff from the past. We have baggage, essentially. So just understanding, like, it is so common that our projections are actually blocking us from deeper intimacy, from deeper relating to other people, from vulnerability, from meeting someone that really is good for us, that our projections might get in the way. And therefore, with this, it's a process of just getting to know when we might be projecting. And we can get to know our projections through our triggers. If we're feeling really dysregulated around certain things that our partner is doing, or if we're feeling like we're not going to meet someone because we have these deeper seated beliefs within ourselves, we want to start doing that inner work in order to resolve it so that we can experience deeper connection with others and also meet someone that is right for us. So that was number 1. Number 2 is a really interesting one, and it's called limerence. Limerence is a psychological phenomena that happens when, again, we're projecting onto our partners, but the projection becomes so big and so fantasy filled that we're not actually able to see the person that's right in front of us. We might actually then become super, super obsessed with someone, especially if it's in like the beginning of the relationship, which kind of commonly happens, right? Love hormones get kind of blown up. The problem is with this one is that we might be projecting so much of our yearning, so much of our unmet needs, so many of the things that we deeply desire in a partner onto that person without there actually being necessarily being reality. That person, we might be projecting these incredible qualities that they have. They are so handsome, they're so beautiful, they're so amazing, and they're going to be the savior, maybe. Then with that projection, we're not actually seeing who the person is in front of us. We're putting a lot of our unconscious material onto them. And what I mean by that is that sometimes if we didn't have the needs met that we needed when we were older, we wish that someone would come and save us in our childhood, or if we felt like we needed that protective mom or dad or sibling or friend, whatever it might be, we might be putting that onto that person. We needed the perfect person growing up, and we might be expecting and kind of putting the headlights onto that person being that thing. And well, again, like there's a healthy aspect of this, I would say, where we're really seeing this person in the light, right? Like we're getting to know someone and it's really exciting, and we're having fun getting to know them as well, and we're seeing all the positive qualities that they are, because that's probably what they're showing as well in the beginning of a relationship. And then just knowing too that when we're getting to know someone, and it takes time to get to know someone, our mind might be filling in the gaps of what we don't know yet with our unconscious stuff, our unmet needs, our deep desires, our emotions, like things that we haven't really felt within ourselves or have been repressed for some reason or another. Is put, like suddenly we have a place to put that stuff, and we'll put it on that partner or that person, right? And with this one, I have been both on the receiving end and as the person that does the fantasizing and the obsessing about the other person, where I've seen this person to be this so perfect, can't do no wrong. And the problem with that was that I'd start then being more in relationship with the fantasy that I was creating in my head, because I hadn't given enough time to get to know the person. And I was then creating, like, again, my mind was filling in the gaps by things that I really wanted the person to be for me. And what would happen from that was that the person would inevitably disappoint me, because all of a sudden red flags started showing up and I couldn't ignore them anymore. Or their imperfect self would show up, and I hadn't dealt with my own imperfections at the time. So being triggered when I saw that come up in others made it so that inflated balloon that I saw of them just like crashed down to the floor. The person was not who I thought they were. I realized that so much of it was fantasy, and that was not fun to experience. And then on the flip side of that, I also experienced being the receiving end on that. Someone put me in these idealized characteristics and this pedestal of a vision of me that was so idealized that I felt like there wasn't room for any other part of me, or at least that person wasn't interested in my whole self, wasn't interested in my human. They only wanted me to be this one thing that they had made in their head about me. And I'm sure that they were just experiencing limerence themselves based on what they experienced from their past. Total understanding for that. But it was not fun for me, because again, it felt horrible to feel like I had to be this perfect version for someone else. And if I was anything else, then they wouldn't like me anymore. That wasn't fun. So just knowing that our mind likes to fill in gaps, especially if we have a lot of unconscious stuff we haven't looked at. we will then kind of put that onto the other person, especially if there hasn't been enough time to really get to know someone, making space for all of them, kind of being a realistic like assessment. Is this person actually right for me? And is this a partnership that is healthy and grounded, right? Versus being these kind of like highs of idealization and this is how it should be according to my own fantasy, right? So that was number 2. Number 3 is attachment wounding. And this is a big one for anyone that has experienced insecure attachment, meaning we are maybe more anxious or avoidant leaning. And this ties into our childhood attachment, like how we developed our own attachment style based on how secure we felt with our caregivers. If we experienced secure attachment where we experienced emotional closeness and availability from our parents and consistency to have our needs met, and we also experienced healthy boundaries and this sense of independence, like you can do the things, like we believe in you can do this, you can fix your own problems, you can take care of yourself, and also we're there if we need you, and like creating that healthy sense of individuality, and then also the healthy sense of closeness. If we didn't experience that, if we experienced inconsistency, or we're expected to meet our needs met or have our needs met all the time by ourselves, or we didn't, sometimes our parents were there and sometimes they weren't, that we might have developed a either more avoidant or anxious leaning or disorganized leaning attachment style. And the thing about attachment styles is I really don't want to pathologize it. And I actually also want to be like, this is something that we get to take responsibility for and improve within ourselves. Just because I have an anxious attachment style or more anxious leaning attachment style, which I do, that doesn't mean that that's a sentence for the rest of my life, or that I can't do anything about it in order to heal that and work with that within myself and also within my partnership. And what the work here is to understand that when we can be aware of what our attachment style is, then we can be vulnerable with our partners or potential partners and let them know what we have going on. This is what I experienced in past relationships, in my past. This is a tendency that I have, and it has nothing to do with you. It's something that I'm working on within myself, and it might come up in our relationship. And I'd love for this to be an awareness that we have in our relationship, and maybe you get to know too what yours is. And through that, we can create vulnerability and communication around, oh, hey, here's my anxious stuff coming up, or here's my more avoidant stuff coming up, where the avoidance is more kind of pulling away and not feeling that comfortable with emotional closeness and not needing to be close so much, right? It's the same way where anxious attachment leaning might be more, I need that emotional closeness, I need that reassurance, I need you to be there, where we might be more focused on what they're doing than what we're actually feeling and needing, right? This one is very common if we're like constantly interpreting text messages, and maybe we're looking at what emojis the person is saying and we're kind of overanalyzing it. That can be a sign of the more anxious leaning, while avoidance can be more kind of like, I need space and you're being too much right now. And that is them actually or then maybe projecting a little bit of what they experienced growing up onto the partnership. Number 4 is the shadow of distrust. And with distrust, it kind of goes along with the same kind of projections that I've already mentioned, where we're pulling things from the past onto our current situation. Maybe if we have experienced abandonment, betrayal, or some sort of other hurt, we might be so focused on our partner, maybe believing that they're going to betray us in some way, they're going to break our trust in some way. We might be super focused on what they're doing online, whose pictures they're liking, who are they following, who are they texting, right? And we might feel really, really jealous if they're talking to other people or whatever it might be. And the thing with this one is this having awareness of where this might come from. Is this actually warranted for the person that's right in front of me? Are they actually doing something that is breaking my trust, or am I projecting my past onto them, right? Am I projecting something that happened in the past and I'm expecting them to do the same in this relationship? And with this one, again, it's just becoming aware of what parts of us are distrusting. Why do I feel this jealousy or distrust? And what is it within me that's making me feel so triggered when I feel like they're doing something to break my trust, right? Doing that inner work first and foremost, doing the emotional things that are needed in order to understand where we're coming from, and then meeting that and communicating with our partner. Discernment is so important here because we want to discern between what's a projection from my past and what's actually my intuition. What's actually like evidence for there is actually something shady going on that I want to be in tune to. With projection, it's usually very triggered, right? It's usually very emotional. And that is where, again, we come into becoming curious, what is this fear that's being triggered within me? Intuition is more calm and it's more kind of just picking up on stuff, but it doesn't have this very strong emotional reaction. And it's also complex and goes together. But I just want you, if you experience this, to have discernment between the two, between your intuition and what's actually warranted, what's actually real. Is this person actually doing something, or is it more projection from the past, right? So that was number 4. Number 5 is codependency. And I have so much love for this one because this is something that I've really, really experienced in my past. I even went to 12-step meetings for codependency where it was this experience of feeling like my relationship or my sense of self-worth depended on the relationship. My sense of identity depended on the person that I was with. I also felt like it was my role to rescue and to save the person that I was with. So I would date people who were both emotionally unavailable and then also people I believed needed my saving. They were emotionally wounded and hurt, and it was my responsibility to take care of them and to heal them, right? And this, of course, came from childhood and from my own childhood experiences that I was just then replicating through my relationships. And what happened then was I kind of lost myself in relationships. I became who they wanted me to be, and I felt like all my needs and who I was just became lost in order to be there for this person. I became kind of invisible in a sense. And through that, it cultivated a lot of resentment in me. It cultivated a lot of fear and a lot of resentment. I think that's the biggest word, where when I went into a very deep healing around this, I had all this pent up resentment for who I had been, both resentful toward myself and toward the people that I had been with for like having put me in this role. And of course, it wasn't anyone to be, the resentment was real. I had to feel that within my body and I had to process it. But then also just recognizing that this was just a protective pattern that my nervous system had learned at a very young age in order to stay safe and belonging in relationships early on in my life, right? So with this one, it's just understanding, like, do we lose our sense of self-worth and identity when we're in relationship with someone? Are we feeling like we need to rescue them? Are we dating people who are maybe unhealthy and we're maybe going into trauma bond dynamic where they have unresolved stuff and we feel like we have to help them and we go into rescuer mode, right? And how can we do the work within ourselves to recognize that so that we don't go into codependent behaviors and dynamics with someone else, and we don't continue to do that in the future. We break the cycle now, right? And a thing that I just want to mention with this one, codependency can sometimes be kind of pathologized. It can be kind of this like, oh, it's this illness that people have, and I don't believe that at all. It's not. It's an attachment, or it's a strategy for attachment. It's a strategy for receiving love, and there's nothing wrong with us for having that. It's just a protective response, or it's a learned way of being in a relationship that deserves compassion and awareness and patience to work through. So that was number 6. Number seven is expectations. And with expectations, it is really, really important to get to understand again that projections is everything. Did we maybe experience a lot of unmet needs in past relationships that we're then projecting onto our current relationships? I did not have my needs met growing up or in past romantic relationships, and I feel angry about that now, and maybe angry or sad. Maybe am I then expecting that those needs to be met in my current relationship? Maybe we're projecting the need for the perfect partner that has everything we ever wanted because we didn't receive that before. Maybe we are then not even knowing what our own needs are. We're just expecting someone else to know what they are. We're expecting them to understand us fully. No one understood us when we were younger or when we're past relationships. We expect that from them. We expect them to be this hero, this savior, this someone that is so everything that we ever wanted and we didn't have, right? And this is just an invitation to become more aware, not to get like down on ourselves or judge ourselves for this. It's just kind of noticing that maybe we have really high standards and high expectations for someone because we didn't experience that earlier. We have all these needs that were unmet. Maybe we weren't aware of them ourselves, and we're expecting that person to meet those needs. The thing that's so powerful to recognize with this is that the more we become aware of our own needs within ourselves and we meet those needs ourselves, that is where we actually become a match for someone that can meet those needs also, right? Like, we take responsibility to be all the things that we feel like was lacking before: emotional closeness, availability, adventure, intimacy, whatever it might be that's really important to us. We become those things for ourselves. And through that, that is actually where someone can meet us there, right? But we don't expect them to meet that within ourselves. And it's through our own integrity of meeting those needs and understanding what we want within ourselves, knowing that we can and are able to do that, that we become less demanding in one way, but then also we just meet and are with someone potentially that has the capacity to also meet that within the relationship, right? So with this one, it's just understanding that how much we might be putting things from the past onto our partners, and that does a disservice to our partners because that can lead to things like nitpicking and feeling like they're not enough, right? And that doesn't feel good for anyone. The more we take responsibility for ourselves, the more improved our relationships become, because that is where we also then are able to have more vulnerable conversations and vulnerable asks of, hey, it would be really great if you could meet me here, right? I do it for myself, and it's also something that would help me in our relationship to feel closer. What are your needs with this as well? Last one, and possibly one of the most important ones, is intimacy. And intimacy both emotionally, physically, and sexually. This is something that I really worked through my 2 years of doing deep healing work, because I felt disconnected from myself emotionally, sexually, physically, and it was through kind of doing the work to become intimate within myself that I didn't feel so fearful of it or disconnected from it when I then went into a relationship that was a lot more healthy than what I'd experienced before. Because before, I would experience the sense of not being disconnected from my body. I would feel like I would just want to please my partner. I didn't know how to be emotionally intimate or express my own emotional needs and wants and my own emotions. I felt like were wrong, and I couldn't, it was more kind of important for me to be there for someone else and their emotional needs, kind of mothering them in a sense. And it was through my own mothering myself, I'd say, my own emotions, getting to know myself intimately, that I was then able to both give and receive in relationships. And this is not just romantic relationships, this is friendships as well. I stepped out of that kind of codependent behavior where it felt like I was the savior and the rescuer for other people, and instead allowed myself to be seen vulnerably, allowing myself to be seen emotionally, and also meeting myself at a much deeper level through healing my own sexual wounding and things that I had experienced in the past through my body. So with this one, it's just important to understand that if we want more intimate, deeper connection with other people, we first and foremost have to create that within ourselves. We have to become the person, the one that we need first and foremost in order to experience that also within a relationship with someone else. So with that, I'm going to end it. I hope, and I will just caution to be mindful of not using any list that you find online actually, but these ones in particular, to make it yourself wrong or to make yourself bad or to be like, this is another thing that I have to fix. That is not it at all. This is just an invitation for deeper self-awareness and more acceptance, compassion for yourself and the people that you are in relationship with. And just for you to become even more empowered to know that you have the capacity and the availability to do this work within yourself, and your relationships are going to see the effects of it. But first and foremost, you're going to see the effects of it within yourself. You're going to feel so much more self-esteem, worthiness, confidence, a sense of ability to express yourself and safety to express yourself and be able to communicate more your needs within relationships. And that is just going to aid and prevent conflicts that don't necessarily need to be there. And it's also going to make you a match for someone that is able to meet those needs within yourself because you are embodying them first and foremost. So with that, I'll leave you and I will see you in the next one. Take so much care.